Hello, my name is Alicia Smith, and I teach fourth grade at McClintock Elementary at in Pasco. And I'm a little late in doing this. Had some trouble getting into the class, and so I wasn't there at the first Zoom meeting. So a little bit about me. I've been teaching for about 12, 13 years. Most of my teaching has been with dual bilingual ESL, ELL learners um, as a specialist or as pull-out groups. So I have a lot of experience, I feel like, with second language learners, and I also speak Spanish. That's a little bit of my background. I taught in Kennewick for about 8 years, then lived in Utah and taught there for a little while, and then I'm just now newly back to Pasco School District. And this last year was just regular fourth grade classroom at McClintock. So today is June 28th, 2020, and this is my video for competency evaluation number 2. And this will cover competencies 2D, which is candidates can recognize and acknowledge the contributions of diverse cultural groups to our local, national, and global societies. And also competency 2H, which is candidates can explain how his or her own ethnicity, culture, and socioeconomic status influence teaching practices. So at first I really appreciated and enjoyed the article that we read. It reminded me of an experience that I had teaching in Utah. When I was teaching there, I was an ESL pull-out teacher, and so I had small groups throughout the day of students. But I found that there were many teachers that I was taking their students from their class, and they felt that it was my responsibility to teach them, figure them out. They didn't want to take the time to learn about their backgrounds and their language or even their culture. And I found it to be extremely sad. Because I worked with a lot of kids that felt like these kids that were in the article that said they just wish their teacher would get to know them, and possibly they would do better in school because they got to get to know them a little more than just the beginning of school year survey, but really get to know their culture and their families and go beyond that. And so I know that when you do that, you build that relationship with them, and they will work better for you. I remember going to the teachers and giving them, a little rundown of how they were doing in groups, and they would look at me and say, well, they don't work like that for me in class. Well, because they could feel that the teachers didn't really care about them and didn't build that relationship, and they felt almost like a burden in class, that they were different and being sent to ESL class and you take care of them. When I first went to the school, when I first started teaching there, the ESL kids were pulled during their specials time. So I had taught some kids that were in fourth grade that had never really been to specials. They'd never been to PE, PE, music, art, because that was the time they were pulled for ESL. So that it didn't affect any other time of the day in the classroom, I guess. So I fought to have that changed, because I felt like what other better time for an ESL, a second language learner, to be able to use their English and to be able to share their culture and their background in PE, in soccer, or in art, or in music. They could share their culture. And so we were able to change that, and many of these students, it was the first time they were ever able to go to specials. And so it did great things for them, to be able to be with their peers, and not in class instruction per se, during class instruction, but in a more laid back, able to play with their peers and share their culture in a different way. I really liked the, over and over, you could tell from the article that it was about strengthening that relationship with the students. Most important, getting to know their families. I feel that we are definitely lucky here in this area in Pasco to have ways that this culture is, at least the Hispanic culture, is shared, with Cinco de Mayo or with Dia de los Muertos. And we do that in the class because we have a lot of dual language and bilingual classes. And I really appreciate that and can see that makes a difference to students. Our country, our schools, our workplaces, they consist of various cultural, racial, and ethnic groups. And I think this diversity is what makes our country a more interesting place to live. And so if we learn about other cultures, and it helps us to understand different perspectives within the world in which we live. And it helps dispel negative stereotypes and personal biases about different groups. And right away in that article, the very first thing that it said was, children of diverse culture and linguistic backgrounds bring a wealth of knowledge and experience from their homes and communities, which teachers can utilize in their instruction. Right there, right off. They bring it to us. We need to use it in our classrooms. I feel it's really important that we recognize the abundance of diverse cultures, respect others' differences, acknowledge the validity of different cultures and their contributions, value what other cultures offer, encourage the contribution of diverse groups, celebrate rather than just tolerate the differences in order to bring about unity through diversity. That's what I experienced in Utah, that they wanted those ESL, ELL kids to be someone else's problem. I really felt that, and it was sad. Not from all the teachers, but there was about 3 that this is how it was. And it was, well, you're trained in that, you take care, you deal with that part. And that was really hard to see. So my own ethnicity and culture and socioeconomic status, how does that influence my teaching practice? So a little of my background, I was also one that grew up in my mom would say single mom, had 5 children. We were close to poor. And so I feel like with my growing up, it has helped me to better connect with students that came from similar situations that I did growing up. I think it has helped me to be more aware. I am now a single mom myself. And so I wouldn't say that I'm well off, but I do know that how I grew up has affected how I teach. I want those students, all students, to feel welcome in my classroom. I want to strengthen relationships with each individual student. I know that when I was in Utah, I did a lot of home visits, and most of the English language learners lived in the trailer park, and they were even referred to as the kids that live in the trailer park. And I had a co-teacher, and he would get on his little moped, and sometimes I just walk through the trailer park and he'd drive through, and those kids would just run out to us, and they loved that we took the time to go to their homes, to get to know their families, to involve their families. And I saw the difference in my groups. I didn't have them in a classroom setting, but I had them in small groups. And because they knew I cared and I had that relationship with them, they were more willing to work. And I moment. So my growing up again had helped me. At one point I went to 4 different elementary schools. Um, in 4th grade, I had to live with my grandma because my mom moved with my brothers and couldn't take care of all of us. So I lived with my grandma. So, um, but I do know that I was guilty of, in the beginning with teaching, I found myself falling into that. The article refers to it as in the classroom, moving beyond the heroes and holidays perspective, a multicultural curriculum. And I knew I fell into that in the very beginning a little, like, oh, let's celebrate, all of my cultural things growing up. And I learned that, you move away from that and involve all the different cultures in the classroom. It's very important I took time right in the beginning of the year before school even started to really get to know the students I had coming in. Again, I had small groups, so this wasn't a classroom of kids, and um, so they were all ELL, ESL learners. I also had refugees that I taught, and so I got to know their families, their background, why they are coming to Utah, why they had to leave their homes in Mexico or wherever it be. And it just made such a difference right off in the beginning of the year. Like I said, it was so much more than just learning, their favorite color and the beginning of the school year, get to know you surveys. But I just really liked also in the article that it talked about um, partnering with the community. Well, the youth in that article, and they partnered with the community, and the way that they worked with them. I mean, what better teachers? And it made me think that it would be wonderful to have some kind of program or teaching prep classes or PDs or whatever it be to teach us teachers how to do that, so that we can engage with our students, we can communicate with their families, we can collaborate as equal partners with our students and their families. Their families feel comfortable coming to the school. And so, yeah, it would be great to have training for teachers to move past that traditional way of teaching. And there needs to be that fundamental shift in our educators, what we thought, how we teach. And just there's such an amazing abundance of cultural diversity, and we need to be using it in our classrooms and in our teaching instruction. And there was one last, I'm not sure if I can find it really quick. Oh, I think someone might have mentioned this in their video as well, but I liked how it says that sincere trust between students and their teachers begins when teachers and students both make courageous moves to unlearn deep habits of accustomed power in roles and relationships. We need to have that equal ground with our students. It will make a huge difference in how they work in the classroom. I think we need to recognize and respect that ways of being, they may not necessarily be like mine. And so if we build that trust and that respect and understanding across all cultures, we'll be in a better position with our students.